Writing melodies is something I get asked about all the time, and I put it off for a while because I couldn't think of a system that truly helps people create their own. But after breaking down my own process, I've come up with a few approaches that I hope you'll find helpful. Feel free to share your own ideas in the comments too. The more perspectives, the better. The first step I like to take is to think about the kind of sound I want for the melody. And by sound, I don't mean the actual notes, but rather how I'm going to deliver the melody. This usually leads me to consider the technique or combination of techniques I want to use before worrying about which notes to play. For example, let's say I have a basic foundation for a song, maybe a chord progression, a simple bass line, and a drum groove. Now I know I want to create some sort of top line or riff to go with this, but instead of jumping straight into the notes, I'll decide on the overall sound first. Here's what I'm working with before adding any melody. The song already has a bit of a Midwest emo sound, so to lean into that, I could shape the melody using octaves or tapping, both common techniques in the genre. Of course, I can always change my mind if the technique isn't working, but placing a limitation like this can help me focus by giving me a clear framework to work within. I'll go with tapping as my main technique and move on to the next stage, finding the actual notes. I'm not very good at this technique myself, so apologies for how basic this riff might sound, but again, leaning into your own limitations can actually be helpful. Whenever I write tapping parts, I tend to keep my tapping finger anchored around the same fret and let my fretting hand do most of the work. Since I'm in an open tuning for this song, writing these parts is a bit easier to begin with. First, I'll try to find a fret where the tapped notes feel most at home across the entire chord progression, then I build out from there. In this case, fret 16 sounds good to me, or fret 7, since I have a capo on the 9th fret. I've got these notes, G sharp, F sharp, and C sharp, acting as a sort of pedal tone for my riff. While I use my fretting hand to shape the melody. A very basic way to start these kinds of riffs is to tap a note first, then pull off to either an open or fretted note, and then sequence everything into a catchy or memorable pattern. I quite like parts that loop seamlessly, where you don't necessarily hear a distinct start or end to the riff, so I want to combine that idea along with the tapping technique. One way to incorporate this is by avoiding the obvious downbeats when starting and ending phrases. Mixing in techniques like slides can help blur the natural stops and starts you typically hear when just picking out a melody. Combining all these elements, tapping, hammer-ons, pull-offs, slides, and seamless transitions, led me to come up with this part. I don't want the main takeaway here to just be about writing tapping riffs. Instead, I want to show how you can use this framework to craft melodies that fit your own songs, no matter the genre or your skill level. Another helpful way to approach writing melodies is to stop treating them as just a single track. Of course, plenty of great riffs are just one guitar part playing a melody on its own, but another approach is to break a melody into separate tracks, parts, and sounds. This is where concepts like counter melodies and harmonies really come into play. To explain this idea, I wrote a song recently for a client that has 3 distinct melodies happening at once. As they're introduced, they take on different roles within the song. But first, let's listen to just the foundation before any real melodic ideas are added. The first melodic idea I added was this really simple picking part, mostly outlining a C sharp minor chord. Like with the tapping riff earlier, a lot of melodies I write revolve around using certain notes as anchors or pedal tones, while changing others around them based on the chord progression. In this case, the C sharp serves as my anchor, while everything else shifts around it. After this, I felt like the song was sounding a little empty melodically, so I came up with this double-tracked part to tuck quietly beneath the main riff I just showed you. What I liked about this part is that it helps to fill in the gaps between the lead melody without overpowering it. As the lead melody already had a lot of space within it, these parts fit together quite nicely. You can also enhance this in the mix by making strategic decisions about what should be the central melody and what should sit more in the background. Most of the time, it's as simple as making one much louder than the other, along with adjusting their placement in the stereo field. Here, the lead melody is kept centered, similar to how you'd normally pan vocals, while the secondary melody is quieter and panned out towards the sides. Lastly, to add some variation in the second playthrough of this section, I introduced a synth melody on top. I wanted this part to become the focal point of the song, so the previous two melodies dip down slightly in volume when it's introduced. However, I purposely wrote the synth part with the center guitar in mind, ensuring that neither clash sonically, it just acts as a melody and counter melody to one another. Combining all three parts together sounds like this. If you're having the opposite problem, struggling to come up with unique chord progressions underneath, check out this video on how to find them entirely by ear, no theory needed.